Now, obviously, you have to, in Islam, you purify yourself before you do it, and that's preparation for entering into this state. Like the ihram before Hajj. You're going into a sacred space, and so you want to prepare for that space. And so the wudu is a way. And wadu'a comes from brightness, because the face will be luminous on the Day of Judgment, and the arms and the limbs from wudu. Wadu'a means to be luminous or bright. And the Prophet ﷺ said on the Day of Judgment, they asked him, how will you know your followers? He said, they'll be ghur muhajjalun. They will be like the piebald horse. You know how these horses have the white, they're brown, but then they have the white on the face, and then they have the front and the hind are all white. That's how he described his followers. And he said, from the athar min athar al-wudu, from the effects of wudu. So again, what you're doing is preparing yourself for something that occurs in the next world, which is the luminosity of practice. And this is why if you've ever met anybody that's mastered anything, it has affected their being. It can't. I don't care if they're a master pianist, a master ballerina, whatever it is, you will see that they have qualities that you don't find in ordinary human beings. I guarantee you, it doesn't matter what the mastery is, you will find that a committed practice to something in which a person has done it religiously every day, it has an effect on their character. And that is why the highest thing that you can do is to work on perfecting your soul, on your heart, on your experience of the world as a theater of divine manifestation. So that is what prayer is about. And water is a purifying element. It's an outward element, but it's the purest thing that we know of in the world. We talk about it in our language, in our metaphors. It was crystal clear. It was as clear as water. So problematic, because you're so focused on the rules, you can't really focus on the spirit of the prayer. But that's a necessary stage of prayer. So learning the rules really well until they really become second nature. And then you begin to work on your spiritual presence in the prayer. And part of that has to do with the amount of dhikr that you do during the day. And that's why the more dhikr you do, the better your prayer. And also wudu is very important. Sidi Ahmed Zarruq said, your presence in your wudu determines your presence in the prayer. And one of the things that people do is they do wudu very hastily and very ritualistically, so that their wudu is no longer an act of worship. And one of the best things that I ever was exposed to was watching Murabt al-Hajj do wudu, because it really hit home the first time I saw it. It is a deep act of worship, wudu. And we tend to forget that. Wudu is actually part of prayer. It's a very deep act of worship. So being present in wudu, not doing wudu in a bathroom, is really important too. Not doing it where the toilet is. Doing it in a place that's... there's other things. There's one of the things Sidi Ahmed Zarruq says, saying before you start your prayer, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ النَّاسِ, before you actually go into the prayer, just to remove the waswasa and get out of that. And then the adhan, which is another amazing thing, because it's so extraordinary that other religions have these calls, like the shafar, which is how the Jews call with the ram's horn, and the Christians have the bell. How did the Prophet ﷺ, through a dream, different people saw it. Bilal was one of them. They saw to call with the human voice people to prayer. So not to use anything artificial, but to use the voice itself to call people to the prayer. And then saying Allah is greater, I bear witness that there's no God but Allah, I bear witness that Muhammad is a messenger of God. And then hurry to prayer, hasten to prayer, hasten to falah. Falah is harvest. That's what falah is. So what you're coming to is a harvest. That's what prayer is. You're reaping the benefit of the day, because the day was made for prayer. And if you miss the harvest, you've missed the point of the day. It's just like somebody who's planted seeds all spring, and then when summer comes and it's time to harvest, they don't go and they don't harvest what they planted. So what was the point? The same in being in the world. The point of being in the world is this practice. And that's why never belittle the reality of the prayer. The prayer is the most important thing that you will do in your life as a constant practice. And you should be committed to perfecting your prayer. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle to be committed to wakefulness, to be committed to doing your wudu correctly, all these things. And some people can see it as tedious. But the beauty of practice, and every master knows this, is that the proof is in the pudding, like the English say. The better you get, the more important the prayer becomes. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, "Arihna biha ya Bilal." Give our souls repose by calling us to prayer, O Bilal. Arihna biha. And he said his repose was in his prayer. And he said that the coolness of my eye was in prayer. And the Arabs use the coolness of the eye as cold tears are tears of joy. Hot tears are painful tears. The cool tear is a joyful tear. So what he was saying is that the joy of my life is in my prayer. Prayer was not something that was dreadful to him. And Adi ibn Hatim said, from the time I became Muslim, I never heard the adhan except I was yearning for the time. And that was his experience of the prayer. From the time he became Muslim, he never heard the adhan. It wasn't like, oh, I got to pray now. It's anybody who does prayer seriously, you thank God for that. Just that stopping. So the prayer is a gift, and people that really practice it, you can't even imagine. I mean, even though I went 18 years without doing the Muslim prayer, since I became Muslim, as far as I know, I've never missed a prayer. I couldn't imagine not praying. I could not imagine it. I could not imagine it. I couldn't. It's just something I can't even imagine. Being deprived of prayer would be like being deprived of breathing. And the Prophet, in his beautiful description, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, points out the prayer's effect. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Tell me, if one of you had a river at his door and he washed in it 5 times a day, would any of his filthiness remain?" And they said, nothing of his filthiness would remain. He said, that is the likeness of the prayer 5 times a day. God obliterates wrongs with it. So that's part of the going back to the prayer. So that's prayer, and asta'inu bis-sabri was-salah. There's a lot of verses in the Quran to use the prayer as a way of taking succour and help from Allah.
قد قال عمر رضي الله عنه في الصلاة in the Muwatta of Imam Malik, Sayyidina Umar said, من حفظها وحفظ عليها فهو لما سواها أحفظ ومن ضيعها فهو لما سواها أضيع. Whoever is mindful of the prayer and guards his prayer, then he will be mindful of everything else. But whoever is negligent of his prayer, he will be more negligent about everything else. وقال أبو بكر بن العربي لقد رأيت ممن يحافظ عليها آلافا لا يحصيها ولا أعد ممن يحفظها خمسة. I saw thousands upon thousands, innumerable numbers, that were vigilant about doing the prayer, but I can only really count about 5 who were mindful in the prayer. وإنه لكذلك. And he says, indeed it is like that.